Kwa hivyo niko 100% tarehe 7 Novemba itakuwa mzuri sana.
The complainant is duly registered as a voter. B, the respondent's decision of 10 September 2019 declining the nomination of the complainant on account that he was not registered as a voter is hereby set aside. The Commission has looked at the acknowledgement slip which the Deputy Registration Officer confirmed to be authentic. In addition, the committee looked at the complainant's details in the BVR kit and was satisfied that the elector's number on the acknowledgement slip and as shown in the BVR kit matches.
So did IEBC really jump to the gun when they declared that Mariga is not eligible, is not an eligible voter because he had not really registered? So what really changed, over the week? Did they do the due diligence afterwards, after they made that particular pronouncement? We just want to hear from our panelists this morning, and also there's someone also who is going to give another tripping wire as far as his candidature is concerned. But let's just begin with Otiende on this. Did they really jump the gun? We can see, yes.
They did not jump the gun because, in fairness, the law provides for that kind of process. The law provides that the returning officer will make the determination in terms of eligibility. And the law provides, and is founded in the Constitution, that if there's any issue in relation to that, then you can appeal to the IEBC, which constitutes itself into a tribunal. And that actually draws from Article 88, 4E of the Constitution. However, I have said this before, and only 2 weeks ago, we were in a meeting with the IEBC commissioners and others and made this submission again, that Article 88 does two things for IEBC. First, in 88.4D, it mandates IEBC to regulate the process of nomination of candidates by political parties. Then in E, it empowers IEB to settle electoral disputes. At the time we made that provision, there were no established mechanisms, even within the parties, for settling disputes. Subsequently, Parliament, in its wisdom, did two things. One, it provided that each party must have an internal dispute resolution mechanism, some sort of tribunal. Yes. And each party now does, even the Jubilee does. Secondly, it then provided for the political parties tribunal, which also has a mandate that is comparable.
Yes.
So what we have now is a situation where, arising from a party nomination, you actually have 4 levels. You have the internal party mechanism, you have the political parties tribunal, you have the IEBC, and then you have the High Court. That is untidy. I have suggested that if there's one thing that the IEBC should do, it should involve itself a lot more in the process of political party nomination,
yes,
and a lot less in dispute resolution, and cede that both to the political parties tribunal and to the courts. So that's on that first one. But on the second, I think that the decision by the IEBC was completely wrong on so many fronts. And I cannot explain them sufficiently. Let me just take a few. One, as Dr. Seli was explaining, every law must have a purpose. So when Section 5 of the Elections Act says that once a declaration of a vacancy is declared, you can then not register in that constituency, the purpose is to tidy that ground. And therefore, what the IEBC did was to say in Section 5, it stops registration in that very constituency, but as a voter. But you can register as a candidate anywhere else. That is outrageous. Not only does it defeat the purpose of that section, it actually defeats the very right that is captured in Article 38. Look at it this way. The tribunal is saying, under Article 38, everyone has a right to register as a voter, to vote, and to be a candidate. Using that right, if you are in Kibra, once the vacancy was declared, you cannot register as a voter. And therefore, if you registered now, you cannot vote. But somebody is allowed to register elsewhere to be a candidate in that very constituency. That is contradictory. Because if you say, the reasoning is that under Article 83, administrative measures should facilitate that right. Why should it facilitate it for a candidate and not for a voter? And all of them draw from Article 38.
Yes.
Secondly, the The Kethi Kilonzo decision said a lot of things. And by the way, Mariga's case and Kethi's are all on all fours. And so the question is, what is it that the court saw in the Kethi Kilonzo that made her be declared ineligible that is not in the Mariga case? What I would have thought is that they would have gone out of their way to demonstrate the distinction. All that they say is that the Kethi Kilonzo decision applied the law as it then was. They don't say which part of the law was there then, which is not there now. And quite honestly, there's nothing, except that right now we added the idea of the, the electronic voter register. And that does not change the law. Thirdly, it's very interesting. Section 4 of the IEBC Act requires, let me talk about the register. First, it says you must be in the current register. Okay, current register. For the IEBC to make that decision, they needed at some point in those 20 pages to show us in which register does Mariga's name appear. Do you know that is not addressed anywhere? Under Section 4, they could only do two things. They could show in which register it appears, and under Section 4, the register can only be of the polling station, of the ward, of the constituency, of the county, or of persons outside Kenya. They did not bother to tell us in which of these categories does Mariga's name appear. Then they say that it is possible that the returning officer could have missed Mariga's names in the KIMS kit because of the difficulties of transmission. That's fair. But then they should now have told us that they have now checked some particular KIMS kit and they have found his name. They don't address that anywhere. So the bottom line is they nullify the decision of the registrar, of the returning officer, but they do not establish anywhere that Mariga's name appears in the register, except to say that he has a slip that shows that he had applied. So let me talk about that slip. In the Kethi Kilonzo decision, the court properly said that merely having a slip is not evidence that you are registered. And that is the proper way. The reason is, that slip shows you have applied to be a voter. It does not automatically make you a voter.
Yes.
You could be a non-Kenyan who has come with a fake ID, and then you have applied and you have that slip. Once they discover that you are non-Kenyan, they will strike off your name. The IEBC itself has always told us there's such a thing as cleaning the register. Cleaning the register actually means you are going through the register, you are verifying things to determine whether these persons are properly registered or not. That slip is evidence of application. It is not evidence of entitlement to vote. I think that they got it wrong in so many ways, including the question of age.
Yes.
They admitted somebody called Conchela, who came with all sorts of issues, including the discrepancies in Mariga's age.
Yes.
And then the IEBC said, we are not going to examine other incidental issues, because those ones are for another forum. We will only focus on the original issue. But come to think of it, if he presented an ID, which is what is said to have been presented, which has now been questioned as to whether it was fraudulent or not, then it is part of what the IEBC must establish. So I think that all this, the IEBC got it wrong in so many ways, and I would not be surprised if somebody takes a further opportunity to examine it. Having said that, though, for us, I think it is okay. It is actually a good opportunity, because had Mariga been locked out completely, they would be crying foul. Now it is the time that we will demonstrate to Dr. Boni Halwele and the others that you don't just adopt children without prior considerations.
All right. Let's say do you think also the about turn of IEBC, there could be a clammy finger or clammy hands from the executive?
I think, IEBC is supposed to be independent, but has never been independent. That one all Kenyans are aware of. But this particular decision of IEBC has actually muddied the political waters. In fact, it has lowered the bar.
No, my question is, do you think actually there's actually the underbelly or the clammy fingers of the executive on this?
Well,
do you think they're independent? You say they're not independent.
They've never been independent. I think I was answering you and I said they've never been independent. So for me, their decision is not surprising, because they've never been independent. And what pains me most is that they're supposed to be policing the election space. But right now they have lowered the bar on integrity of the candidates, because this is an issue of integrity. Because if you take a law that says voter registration will stop at this particular time in a particular jurisdiction, then you go and register elsewhere and insist that now I'm a registered voter, I should be able to stand there. You are actually breaking that law. That means your integrity is questionable. So here they have actually lowered the bar of integrity on elected leaders, and they have opened an avenue for a petition in case Mariga wins. That's what they have done. They have actually opened that door, which is very unfortunate because these are supposed to be the people policing elections in Kenya. It's not a question of whether he was registered or not. It's a question of when was he registered. It's not a question of whether he was registered or not. It's a question of when was he registered. As I said earlier, it's a very unique situation in the sense that we can easily get an MP who has never voted in his life, has not even voted for himself ever, because in this case, Mariga cannot vote in Kibra. So we'll get a very unique situation that somebody is going to go to parliament who has never voted and has never voted even for himself, because that's the situation we are facing now, which is very interesting. And I think IEBC has failed flat in its duty to actually police the election space. They have actually fallen flat. In fact, they have messed it up completely. And I have always said that this particular IEBC, I think there's something terribly wrong with it. It is not independent, so that I should be dropped from its from its acronym IEBC. We should drop the I, because they are not.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.